Speaking of frothing for it, on the blower we have, I reckon if you were to say that you were to build the Mount Rushmore of Western Force heroes, Matt Hodgson would be up there, maybe Nathan Sharp.
Henjack.
I knew you were going to say Matt Henjack. So they throw Matt Henjack up there, and you'd probably say Ian Pryor would be right up there as well. One of the fan favourites from the Western Force is joining us. Ian, how you doing, brother?
Good, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.
No, it's an absolute pleasure to have you, mate. I just wanted to get your opinion on this. I don't know if you were tuned into our conversation we were just having in regards to the World Cup and the recent comments from Rugby Australia about going after some NRL talent. You're one of the older heads in the game here in Australia. You've been with the Force for a while now, so you can sort of see the growth of the game over there and within the game here in Australia. What are your thoughts on actively going after the NRL, or at least their players in particular?
Yeah, look, I think I sit sort of on Doss's side here where you want to invest in the guys that are currently in the game, and then, I don't think you need to go out with the checkbook if you want to get guys across. You've got a couple of big things there with, the World Cups, the Olympics, and the British and Irish Lions series, and that if you're interested in the game, that should be enough to get you across if you're competitive and you want to be in there, and if you've got a history in the game rather than sort of paying overs for guys and, not investing in the game and the grassroots itself. That's what I personally think.
That's not a bad answer considering you're wearing a Manly Sea Eagles jersey as well, mate. So, yeah, well done. Very political of you.
It's we have retro cards around here where you got to wear an old school rugby league jersey. Obviously, if I wore an old school rugby union jersey, I can't really wear a Reds or a Tars or a Brumbies one, so I had to go with the rugby league option. So, yeah.
Fair enough. We'll let it slide.
It's a mate. It's a brilliant jersey. I'm on. I hate Manly, but I do like that jersey. I was glad to see them get beaten. No, exactly. Sitchy, mate, good to have you on. You have obviously, mate, over 100 games for the Western Force. Over 100 games of Super Rugby. Majority of them with the Western Force. You've been over there since, mate, 2014. Did you leave the Brumbies 2013? 2014, so 8 years now, mate. Enjoying your time over there. How has it been? You obviously seen lots of different phases of Western Force Rugby, Global Rapid Rugby, now back in Super Rugby. How have the guys handled the transition from that Global Rapid back into Super Rugby?
Yeah, you're right. I've been around here a while and seen it all. But yeah, I think obviously Global Rapid Rugby was a bit of a startup, and that was exciting to be part of, and the reason I came back from to be able to be part of rebuilding a club and the place I really cared for. So that was super exciting. And then obviously 2020, we were sort of prepped for Global Rapid Rugby and got thrust into Super Rugby with the COVID pandemic, which we sort of enjoyed, but we probably weren't just ready for it. Last year we had a great year, reached the Super Rugby AU finals series, which was really good. Bit of history there for our club. And then this year, we've just been there or thereabouts, 6 bonus point losses there. Just haven't quite finished the detail or finished teams off and, last passes, things like that have sort of let us down in critical moments. And as you guys know, momentum's a funny thing in sport and in rugby in general. And when you're winning, you find ways to win. And when you're sort of just coming up short, you keep finding ways to come up short, unfortunately. So, we were really competitive against the Blues there a couple of weeks. Physicality and our skills, and we sort of let ourselves down last couple of weeks there. So we've got a bit of a job to do this weekend on the Chiefs, who super physical and great around the breakdown, and an exciting team to play against.
Ian Dallin here, mate. You've obviously been around, obviously at the Reds and the Brums, spent some time overseas. Tell us a little bit about the culture and how it's different over there at the moment. Obviously, you guys have been through a fair bit, but you've been able to keep a core group of guys together. And then at the back end of that, you've been able to sign some good young guys coming through. So what's the culture like that, I guess, Tim and you guys as leaders have been able to build over there?
Yeah, so I guess the unique thing about Perth and the Western Force as being a young club is we don't have and we're working on that in the meantime with Andrew and Nicola Forrest and their investments in the grassroots there. So, if you come to Perth and you're not from Perth, you become each other's fans, then, that sort of breeds a great culture there because you're hanging out with each other. You're not just sort of coming to rugby and going out and hanging out with your schoolmates or your uni mates and work mates, that kind of thing. You become each other's family. So, you create this bond and this closeness that's pretty unique. And obviously we felt that during the Great Wall of WA that went up there for a couple of years. No one could come in and out, so couldn't really so we had a couple of Christmas here. But yeah, mate, it's just a hard-working sort of club that's ambitious. We recruit, based on character and then skills as well, and making sure that character is a big part of our recruitment. And we've got good blokes involved. And Tim Sampson, as you guys know, is a ripper fella, and he's been great since he's been rebuilding the club based on values, based on being a good person and being a good rugby player after that. So I think that's shone through in the last 5 years as we've rebuilt this club. And yeah, obviously we've got some exciting young talent coming through now that we're nurturing as us older heads sort of get to the older, crustier age of our careers.
Ian, mate, big fat Darcy. Mate, I was doing some research and I went on your Twitter bio. It says you're accredited exercise physiologist, an aspiring high-performance manager, father, husband, and amateur golfer. How amateur are we talking about with your golfing?
Very, very
nice.
No, we've got a golf group over here. Over the years, we've had some pretty competitive fellas, and I'm sure Doss will tell you from our battles in the Reds Academy back in the day in the dungeon shed, ping pong table battles there. Pretty competitive bloke, and had guys like Richard Kahui, who are scrap golfers, but some of the most competitive men I've met. So the stakes get pretty high on the putting green there. But, at my best, I was probably playing, anywhere 11 or a 12 there. Rob Carney said he was off single digits and he had a couple of mares here, so it made me feel really good about myself in the golfing space.
Love it.
Hey, Sitch, mate, you talked before about Timmy Sampson and the impact that he's had on the Western Force the last couple of years. I had him as a coach down at Tigers, and I just and spent a bit of time with him. He was coaching the Vikings and I was at the Brumbies, and I could not speak more highly of the bloke. What was, I guess, the general feeling around the club when Simon Cron's appointment got announced? And I guess was there communication between the staff and the players in terms of that change being made, or were you guys a bit caught off guard? Because I can imagine he'd be a pretty popular character within the squad.
Yeah, obviously super popular member of the squad and done a lot for a lot of guys' careers, I think, which is, when you look at the guys that have debuted in Super Rugby and got to live out their dream over the last few years, he's really, a testament to helping guys get through there. Your Byron Ralstons, Jack McGregor's, Jakey Straughns, Brad Lacey's, all those guys. He's an outstanding man, an outstanding coach. So, yeah, caught us a little bit by surprise. They brought us in a couple of days before to let us know that the announcement was going out and it was happening. And yeah, it's just, I guess it shows the brutal reality of professional sport and professional rugby, isn't it?
Yeah.
Coaching space. Obviously, we didn't have a great year in 2020. 2021, we created a bit of history, and then 22, we were just shy of halfway through our season, and the decision had been made because they wanted to go in a different direction, and that's obviously above our pay grade. That call's been made, but the way he's handled himself throughout, as you said, Doss, he's a man of immense character, and he's handled himself really well there and put the team first. Said, look, guys, I'm still here to finish the year off with you, and let's finish on a high. Obviously, like I said before, we've come up short a little bit, which has been a bit frustrating in a few games. But yeah, it's just like I said, the brutal reality of sport, isn't it? And being a coach, it's not for the faint-hearted, that's for sure.
Yeah, mate. No, you're exactly right. You think as if you're a player going into coaching, that volatility in your career just never leaves, right? It's just as volatile as a coach as it is a player. And you spoke about, we obviously know, well, we don't know what Sambo's up to next, but for Ian Pryor, you've been over at Perth now for 8 years. I'm not too sure if you're there for another season. You're obviously an accredited exercise physiologist. Thanks, Das.
Amateur golfer.
And a very amateur golfer. But what does what do the next couple of years look like for you and your young family, mate?
Yeah, the big thing now, I'm not just making decisions for myself and my career. It's about, my wife Lizzie and our two little kids, 3 and 8 months old. So a couple of handfuls there, as you would know. So Yeah, mate, we're currently in talks about extending. But obviously, I'm at that point in my career. I'm 31, still playing, I feel, some really good rugby.
Yeah.
And being in a good space there, both on and off the field. So, yeah, it's about that. Do you stay here for that stability and that great lifestyle that Perth offers? And, obviously, I love the club. Or do you sort of look for that adventure with the young family?
Yeah.
Obviously, you've got a bit of this, that, trying to figure out, what's best and what's best for the kids and the family is an interesting one. And then, obviously, my next step, I want to stay involved in the game. Done a couple of degrees because I think every contract I've signed, I thought it might be my last. So
Yeah.
in there. And, I think, just the one thing I think New Zealand does better than Australian rugby is that transition into the game. I think we've got so many good players that have played both here and abroad, and we haven't yet created a pathway to keep them in the game and to keep that intellectual property.
Yep.
And all
Agreed.
the learning next generation. A lot of guys going to corporate world over here in Australia, and fair credit to them. We've got some smart guys there that do that. But you look at New Zealand, how many former players are either coaching, admin, or involved around professional sport, because it is a unique industry. And if you've lived and breathed it for a few years, you get a lot of learnings, a lot of hard lessons that you can pass on. And
Yeah.
I think that would be ideal, is if I could stay involved in the game as a high performance manager or sort of skills coaching. Don't know if I'd want to be a head coach, as we just discussed before. How family. But that would be the dream, mate. So hopefully we'll have that sorted out in the next sort of month and get a bit of clarity around that, and then go from there.
Yeah, well, when you do get it sorted, give us a yell and we'll have we'll get an exclusive PAC announcement. What do you reckon?
Just like John.
Yeah, hell yeah. Yeah, but that was a self-stitch up by him. He's like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. We're like, shouldn't you? Okay,
Yeah.
Oh,
cool. Well, you threw yourself under the bus. Well,
Exclusive tax.
well, I wanted to ask, because obviously the Force are a very unique club in that they were in the competition, obviously got the punt, but then they got that private funding from Twiggy, who just came in and, did some loose shit, had the new rules for the Global Rapid Rugby. You guys were playing the South China Dragons and all this crazy shit. I want to get your thoughts, because we've discussed here in regards to getting money into the game, and I know that obviously the World Cups and the British Irish Lions are going to be a financial boom for Aussie rugby over the next decade, but do you think there is scope for the entire game in Australia, from Rugby Australia down, for privatisation, a la what Twiggy did with the Force?
Oh, mate, absolutely, 100%. I think there's room for it. It's obviously got to be the right person, the right investment, and as a union, and obviously as a sport, you still need to control where that goes and whatnot. But we had some crazy couple of years playing. We had a skydiver almost take out Jeremy Thrush in the warm up once when the lights went out. I sort of scooted out. He was running a line, and this guy in a paraglider suit just came flying past him. Things like that. But in all seriousness, I think it's the way forward for the game. If we've been lucky enough to see how he runs his organisation, and they're a high performance unit, both at Tatarang and Minderoo there, and getting that view from outside the game rather than having, obviously it's great to have people that have been in the game and their experience, but to have fresh ideas from outside the game and outside the sport to challenge your norms, challenge your ideas, and think outside the square a little bit, which is what we have to do as a sport now in the next sort of golden decade, as it's been described, because we've got to set it up for the next generation and the generation after. I think, if you look at the people like the guys that have found Atlassian, or however you pronounce it, sorry, they're investing in the Rabbitohs there. So there is opportunities. We just got to look for the right ones and make sure that we obviously use the money in the right way. I like getting Nudgee College back involved in just rugby.
Speaking your language, J-Ball.
Yeah. Screwed out.
Yeah. So, there's definitely scope for it, but we've seen it can go wrong previously, I think, with the Rebels and the way that all panned out. But I think, do your due diligence, and there's definitely room for it to go there.
So you're saying we got to get firepower back on the mix? Okay, cool. No, all good. No, well, one thing I wanted to ask you as well is that, I mean, we've lamented here the fact that, it seems like there are some players in the game that are sort of, that we are losing them. There's no two ways about it. Guys like Fergus Lee Warner, a man who could sort of play anywhere 4 through 8, bust his ass, and he actually came out and said after he signed to go overseas that he just felt like he wasn't actually getting any communication from Rugby Australia and the coaches up there with the Wallabies in regards to what he needs to do to make the squad. I was chatting to a mate on the weekend, and he was saying that it seems like so many players from the Force, you go over there and you almost go down a rung, and they might even pick a guy from, club rugby in Queensland or New South Wales over you before they go to the Force. Do you think there is any sort of weight in regards to, what happened, the history with the Force, how you're out and then you're back in, and do you reckon that maybe does play a part in regards to, I don't know, like feeling like there is a disconnect in that going up to the Wallabies, as sort of Fergus Lee Warner alluded to?
I wouldn't say at the moment, but calling a spade, probably previously, yeah. A bit of out of sight, out of mind. Obviously, we were a global rapid rugby startup and running in NRC as well, so we probably weren't playing the most competitive rugby against Super Rugby sides week in, week out, so we could understand that back then. And I think Dave Rennie and the coaching group there now have come over to help us out a couple of times, and there seems to be a great alignment and, wanting to build the jersey better and making sure the pathway's there for the guys that want to get there. I think the real challenge for Australian rugby is how do you keep guys in Australia when you do have this overseas money and carrot sort of dangling around. Point in your career where you can, stay here and chase the Wallabies jersey like Ferg could have, or you can go overseas for a couple of years and, set yourself up for that next step in life, which is also pretty important. So, we've got to get creative because we've heard a few times that Australia doesn't have the depth or the depth of talent, which I think is a load of rubbish. If you look at how many Aussies are playing around the world, we definitely produce enough. You look, Zach Holmes has been at Toulouse, one of the best rugby clubs in France for 5-6 years. He was at the Force here. Jakey McIntyre's heading overseas now, another 10. Fergus Lee Warner, these guys. So how do we get creative as a sport and industry to keep them within the game and keep it competitive? If the Wallabies carrot's not there, is it the next step? How do we help them with that or anything like that? I think that would help. We could get all your tax back. That would be awesome.
Let them go and just sign NRL players. I think that's the way to go.
Shut up, Joe.
Too late. I just think we got whether that's through opportunities and business or whatever it may be, coaching. But we obviously can't compete with the money. So how do we get creative around that space? Is the question in my mind.
I totally agree with you, Sitch. I think there's a huge space that hasn't been explored yet to do exactly that, and is to keep our guys here. There's in New Zealand, they talk about the carrot of playing for the All Blacks. The Wallabies jersey, unfortunately, just doesn't have that same pull. And I've asked a few people that question. It'd be interesting to get your insights, Sitch, and you lent on it before. If there was, you talk about ways of keeping guys in the game. Like, do you identify guys earlier? Well, you don't really need to identify. Do you create a program where current players are then exposed to different businesses, different industries? Maybe it's part of, they get a day off, or in your pre-season, off-season, you're doing a bit of time to learn about different businesses. Do you think if there was a proper structure around that and looking guys off the field, would that be a big enough pull to keep guys in the game and stray them away from taking the cash and going overseas?
Yeah, it would definitely be a carrot at the end of the day. Like if there's a formalised structure to be like, here's a pathway into this, whether it be business or, if we end up under 25s and guys can go and coach in that for experience or whatever it may be. If there's a formalised structure, or you start having flexibility around, okay, if you want to take a injury contract that comes up overseas or things like that in the off season when it's not Super Rugby, everyone sort of benefits in that regard. And Australia's one of the best countries to live in the world, obviously.
Yeah, so, exactly.
I think definitely a formalised structure would help. And just give guys that might not want to go overseas or have partners that have careers here that don't want to give it up. Or, there's a lot of things there that can sort of work out whatever. So yeah, I definitely think a formalised structure in some capacity would definitely help in that regard. Maybe you can lead that, DOS, the revolution.
Yeah, man. I'd love to. I just think there's a huge opportunity. And then, you know, people talk about the money overseas and whatever. And having done that, having gone to France for a year while the wife was pregnant, my eldest kid was born over there, and then spending the last 3 years in Japan. Well, not the last 3, but the last 3 of my career. Like going overseas and living overseas, it's not all it's cracked up to be, right?
It's a slog.
Oh man, it's an absolute slog. And depending on the team that you go to, like I went to Honda and their sort of recruitment plan, it was fairly young. So the guys that came over, we had RG Snyman, Jack Debrasini, were all single guys. And I had Beck, my wife, and my 2 kids. And for her, mate, it was the most terrible 6 months of her life because she was just cogged up in this, cooped up in our little apartment with 2 little kids, had no other expats over there to talk to. The kindy, like obviously everyone speaks a different language, so it's not all it's cracked up to be. So I just think if there's something outside of rugby that you can entice the guys to stay, there's going to be huge value there that can be created, and maybe I will lead some sort of revolution. Thanks, Sitch. Putting ideas in my head.
Good stuff, DOS.
That last little bit got quite intense. Whoa. Hell yeah. Dal, you got anything?
Happy wife, happy life.
Good.
That's it, mate. That is it.
Big Fat Das says he's just got one more question for you. What's up, Big Fat Das?
I don't have one. How much do you earn after tax? I don't have a question.
Nah. Well, I mean, one last thing I wanted to get your thoughts on, because I touched on it when we were talking about Twiggy taking over when you guys started Global Rapid Rugby. We were sort of discussing last week about what we could potentially do after things go to Golden Point, and there was there was some jelly wrestling, there was a slapping competition. I think Quirky or someone said maybe we just start dropping players off and opening it up. What are some law variations you wouldn't mind seeing? Because we saw Twiggy come out with some pretty twisted shit.
Yeah, look, I'm not the most creative chap, so I don't really know where you'd go with it. But, yeah, I think just cynical penalties is a big one in the game. So, you know, whether that's not your yellow cards, but coming up in some creative way where you drop a player off a scrum or line out, whatever it may be. And, you know, where there's more enticing of the attack, because that's what everyone comes to watch. Obviously, collisions is a great thing, but everyone wants to watch the attacking rugby. So whether you can, you know, create mismatches or have to defend out on a wing for a set piece or something like that, you know, you could really stitch some big guys up and
that'd be sick.
That'd actually be fun.
Yeah, just for like 2 minutes, forwards have to players' backs and backs have to players' forwards. Imagine Big Pone standing at 10 for the Rebels.
And the one
Actually,
I did
screw
enjoy,
that. You don't want to have that.
Yeah.
the one I did enjoy in Global Rapid was the 8-point try if you scored it from within your own 22, because if you exit well, you play well in Super Rugby and Test Rugby, and team kicks off long, you go to a forward pod and you box kick, or you kick long out, and then just, you know, it's kind of like a bit of chess. Whereas if you've got this carrot to be like, cool, there's a picture there, let's go for it, there's 8 points in it, and you run in one. And the Crusaders ran in one against us at Global Rapid, which was pretty good to watch from Jason. Light up. But, you know, incentive to have a crack, and that was the biggest thing, I think, and having that in the back of your mind. You're not always just thinking, let's get out of our end and, you know, just defend well. It's sort of like, okay, where's the opportunity? Is there one to go here? Let's try and do it. So stuff like that, I think, is massive.
Yeah, I reckon that would be absolutely awesome to see. So let's see if Twiggy can put his hand up to take over Rugby Australia, everyone. But Ian, thanks so much for joining us, brother. As I said, mate, you're an absolute linchpin of the Western Force community, and they're very lucky to have you, mate. All the best for the rest of the season, and hopefully you're there for another couple of years with a young family. You can progress further with them, mate. But, yeah, thanks very much for joining us.
No worries, guys. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Cheers, brother.
Thanks, man.
Round of applause for Ian Pryor, everybody. Mate, he's got some pretty good ideas. Man.
He was brilliant.
He is,
Really
man. He was a
smart guy.
switched on cat.
Humble.
Yeah.
He's a smart man.
He-
And he's not an average golfer, is he?
No, he's a good guy.
Oh, mate.